Imagine a player steps up to take a penalty in a World Cup match. The ball hits the back of the net, and the stadium barely reacts, not because the fans don't care, but because half of them were never there. That is the image the 2026 FIFA World Cup created in its opening days, not on the pitch but in the stands. And the story behind those empty seats is one of the most revealing things that has ever happened to international football. Let's start in Arlington, Texas. AT&T Stadium, 100,000 seats, a venue so large it has its own weather system. The city of Dallas and the surrounding area had spent years preparing for this moment. Hotels booked, businesses staffed, local governments restructured their entire event infrastructure around the projected influx of hundreds of thousands of visitors. Then came the city council meeting that changed everything. The figure disclosed was staggering: 350,000 unsold tickets across the Dallas area fixtures alone. To put that into context, Dallas was hosting 9 matches, including a quarterfinal. The deputy city manager confirmed the numbers: approximately 700,000 total tickets were available across those matches, and only 35 to 50% had been sold. That means nearly half of every World Cup match seat in Dallas had no buyer. For years, local businesses had planned for a revenue surge. What arrived instead was a question nobody had wanted to ask out loud: why didn't the fans come? But before we go deeper into that, if you're watching this and you've followed football long enough to feel the weight of what those empty seats represent, this channel is built for you. Football is where we cover the game beyond the highlights, the money, the politics, the decisions that shape what you watch every weekend. We are closing in on our first 500 subscribers, and if this kind of journalism matters to you, subscribe right now, hit the like button, drop a comment, and share this video. Every single one of those actions helps this channel reach the people who actually care about football. Now back to the story, because Dallas was not alone. On June 6, 5 days before the tournament officially opened, England played New Zealand in a pre-tournament warm-up match at Raymond James Stadium in Tampa, Florida, a 69,000-seat venue. Only 13,000 tickets had been sold. More than 50,000 seats sat empty. Compare that to Wembley Stadium in March, where 80,000 fans packed the stands for England friendlies against Uruguay and Japan. The appetite for England football was clearly not the problem. The problem was what it cost to be in that stadium in Tampa and what it would cost to be at the actual World Cup matches. The supporter economics were brutal. A Category 1 ticket for England versus Croatia in Dallas, a group stage game, was priced at £1,431 per seat. That is a single seat for a single match in the group stage. England's official allocation across the entire tournament was approximately 3,500 tickets. Analysts estimated that even for the warm-up match in Tampa, roughly 1,500 England supporters would make the journey. The arithmetic was doing its own commentary. This was supposed to be the moment World Cup fever arrived in North America. The image it produced was 50,000 empty blue seats on a Friday afternoon in Florida. Then the tickets started disappearing, and not to buyers. Ticket inventory analysts had been tracking FIFA's official sales platform throughout the lead-up to the tournament. At one point, approximately 74,000 tickets were visible on the platform. Then the number dropped to 44,000, then to under 30,000 rapidly, with no public announcement and no explanation offered to supporters. One analyst stated plainly, "There is no plausible scenario where fans bought 40,000 tickets that fast." Two explanations circulated among analysts tracking the situation. The first, tickets had been quietly transferred to corporate sponsors and commercial partners who receive allocations as part of FIFA's commercial agreements. The second, inventory was deliberately obscured to manufacture the appearance of high demand, making the tournament look more sold out than it was. FIFA offered no public response to either theory, but the story did not stop there, it escalated. The New York and New Jersey attorneys general had already launched an investigation, issuing subpoenas and citing what they described as artificial scarcity in the ticketing process. Then came the incident that managed to be both absurd and completely revealing. Approximately 60 supporters completed legitimate checkouts on FIFA's official ticketing platform. The price charged at checkout, $0. Confirmations were sent, seats were allocated. Supporters received official documentation of their purchases. Then on June 3, FIFA contacted each of them. The organization described what had happened as a checkout error and a prior payment issue. The tickets, FIFA told them, were still reserved, but each supporter had 7 days to pay the full original price or permanently lose their allocated seats. These were not secondary market buyers. These were people who had used the official platform, completed an official transaction, received an official confirmation, and were then told to pay again or walk away. Immediately alongside this, on FIFA's own official resale platform, tickets for the World Cup final were listed at $2,299,998.85 per seat, 4 seats behind the goal at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. FIFA was pursuing 60 people over a platform glitch, while $2.3 million final tickets were simultaneously listed on its own resale site. These two facts existed at the same moment. The mechanism behind all of this was a single policy decision: dynamic pricing being used at a World Cup for the first time in history. Between the initial sales window and the weeks immediately before the tournament, average ticket prices increased by approximately 34%. Supporters who had budgeted based on early announced prices returned to the platform and found that the cost had risen dramatically. The model was designed to extract maximum revenue by adjusting prices in response to demand signals. But it produced an unintended consequence, what analysts described as a wait-and-see effect. Rational buyers, aware of how dynamic pricing works and having watched prices drop at the Club World Cup the previous summer, chose to hold off. They expected prices to fall. That expectation suppressed early purchasing, which created visible inventory problems, which then generated the headlines about empty stadiums, which further discouraged purchasing. For lower-profile group stage fixtures, some seats became available on the secondary market well below $100. The model, built to maximize extraction in multiple markets, produced the opposite result. Then the political dimension entered the story. The United States president made public comments criticizing FIFA's ticket prices, describing them as predatory. The context here matters. This is the same political figure who had, at the World Cup draw ceremony, awarded FIFA's president a peace prize, a gesture of commercial and diplomatic goodwill toward the tournament. The public reversal from ceremonial endorsement to direct criticism of FIFA's commercial practices reflected how sharply public sentiment had shifted. When a host nation's head of government is publicly describing the tournament's pricing as predatory, the story has moved well beyond sports. And the reason the empty seats matter extends beyond optics. Football, more than almost any other sport, is shaped by the people in the building. The noise, the atmosphere, the collective reaction to a goal or a near miss, these are not decorative. They change the game itself. Players feel it. The television broadcast carries it. The moments that define tournaments are created by crowds as much as by players. A 50,000-seat deficit in a stadium does not just look bad on television, it removes something fundamental from what the sport is. The warning signs for all of this were visible long before the 2026 World Cup began. During the Club World Cup in summer 2024, held in Atlanta, some matches drew fewer than 25,000 supporters into a stadium with a capacity exceeding 70,000. The same pricing model, the same structural decisions, the same patterns, and the same outcome. The test run failed. The lesson was not applied. By the time the tournament was underway, FIFA confirmed it would continue releasing tickets throughout the competition. Price adjustments were expected. In some venues, last-minute cuts would likely fill seats, as they eventually did at the Club World Cup. But the recovery operation was not the same thing as a success. Hotels in Dallas and Tampa had already absorbed the cost of rooms that went unfilled during the opening match days. City governments that had built staffing, transport, and infrastructure plans around projected visitor numbers were managing the gap between projection and reality. And supporters who had made the decision that the tournament was not financially accessible to them had already made that decision. Lower prices in Week 3 could not reverse the choice made in Week 1. You can adjust the price. You cannot undo the decision a person has already reached. The full picture of what the 2026 World Cup's opening weeks produced is this: 350,000 unsold seats in Dallas. 50,000 empty seats for an England match in Tampa 5 days before the tournament began. 40,000 tickets disappearing from FIFA's official platform overnight with no explanation. 60 supporters contacted and billed after receiving official $0 confirmations. World Cup final tickets listed at $2.3 million per seat on FIFA's own resale platform. The U.S. president publicly describing the pricing as predatory. A 34% average price increase on a dynamic pricing model applied to a World Cup for the first time, and a direct parallel to the Club World Cup 2024, where every one of these warning signs was visible and none of the structural conclusions were acted upon. These events did not happen in isolation from each other. They are connected by a single commercial logic: the decision to treat the World Cup as a revenue extraction mechanism first and a global sporting event second. The empty seats are not a public relations problem. They are the market's direct answer to the question of whether FIFA pushed too far. The answer, written in tens of thousands of vacant plastic chairs across the southern United States, is visible to anyone watching. The final whistle in New Jersey will tell us what FIFA learned or didn't.